Hi, you're still watching Last Lap, the last run. This is the Usain Bolt last 50 meters for GE15. I'm still here with Professor Madhya, Dr. Roy, Anthony Rogers, and Farlina, ISIS. So we've talked about international relations. Glaringly, it's in none of the manifestos that we have seen, but if there are, please send over to us. But now we want to include Borneo. A huge part of Sabah and Sarawak has not been discussed by the mainstream, always because why? They are across the sea. Most of the media, most of the center of power for federal is here, Klang Valley. Even Perlis doesn't get much attention. That's my home state, but Sarawak is the biggest state. So, without further ado, can we just go to the Borneo correspondent for Sinar and Sinar Daily, Mona Manap. Apa khabar ya? Apa khabar Mona? Mona? Hello? Mona? Ini cabaran pembangunan. This is the challenge of any politicians that wants any vote for PRU 15 because how is our connectivity to Sarawak, and also Sabah for that matter. We cannot wait until a young student climb a tree just to get broadband. We can't wait for some people crossing across the border. There's a long border between us and Kalimantan and doing it for not good things because we want good things to come out of good relations. So while waiting for Mona, I'm just going to throw this to Roy. I'm sure Roy has been looking at the other side of Malaysia also. How do you think? A lot of people think of Sarawak and Sabah now as the kingmaker for GE15. And if we look at international relations, Sarawak and the Premier has been going on his own, with his own team, to countries like Singapore to open new offices, like trade offices and everything, and have direct dealings.
Right. Of course, Sabah and Sarawak, the two states in Borneo, are very crucial, as you rightly mentioned, about it is a vote bank, seats for the coming general elections. That's one. But if I were to look from the international relation perspective, as we know that it borders the South China Sea. Earlier on, we discussed about the South China Sea issue. So this issue of South China Sea dispute, it has a direct implication to the fishermen in Sarawak and even in Sabah, number one. Apart from that, don't forget, Indonesia will eventually move their capital to Kalimantan. And that also will have implication to these two states.
Correct.
So in terms of security, in terms of its strategic location. Third, also we always hear about these issues of sea robbery, piracy, and things. So obviously, Sabah Sarawak is a crucial, and not forgetting it's a source of revenue, oil and gas from that region.
Okay. Farina, how do you see Sabah and Sarawak from GE15 perspective, also with the flavor of international relations?
I think something interesting that has been happening in the past few years, particularly when you actually mentioned about the mission that's opening, is about state-level engagements to actually draw more industries into their own states, because that actually ties to the plans that they actually have, their own domestic plans, and I think that allows them to build their capacities that they actually identify in their own states to see how I think to close the gaps. For instance, even in digital, and actually you see Sarawak actually having their own strategies or their own domestic plans, and they actually and in some areas it's actually quite experimental, so that can move faster than some of the federal
and they have
level
green
policies.
diplomacy now because they have access hydropower, and they're doing hydrogen. If they have that, then that can be shared with Kalimantan, because Kalimantan is not the best developed region of Indonesia for the longest time. Mona, are you now able to talk with me? Hi.
I'm here. Hi, Kamarul.
Okay, apa khabar kita? Kami nak tanya, how is Sarawak and GE15, Mona? Do you see flags all over? Are the public ceramahs, burning fiery passion everywhere in Sarawak?
Yes, I see everywhere. Outside my office, I can see it. But mostly in my area is Tampin, and in Kuching is a lot of DAP lah. And I think here the sentiment is, well, based on a lot of people that I've been talking to, they know that GPS was the win majority. But they also know that DAP is fighting hard and to get at least more seats. So how many more seats, we don't know yet. But I also spoke to Kelvin Yee yesterday, and he was talking about, just not about controlling or overtaking the government, but also acting as the balancing act to keep each other in check. So in terms of how many seats do you need to do that? Is 6 seats enough, or do you need more than that? Will more than that mean you're controlling the state, right? And Prof. Sim mentioned before that it's dangerous to have the AP to control our country or our state for whatever reasons. So now it is quite heated up, but a lot of people are pretty relaxed about it. In fact, I spoke to this group of young people, anak-anak muda, diorang start dengan this NGO nama The Generations. And this The Generations ni diorang buat satu survey of about 100 youths, okay, not a big sample, but they ask these people what their feelings are for the election, who are they going to choose. Unfortunately, you would see that 23% of this group of people has little to no interest in voting. So it's either they're not going to go out at all, or just they won't bother, or they'll just follow their friends on the day itself, just for the sake of it. 34% does not know which party they're going to vote. So it's as good as, none. So here you see that there's a lot of the younger people, undi 18, apa semua, wah, berkobar-kobar. Tapi when it comes to the actual implementing of, your rights, that means voting, they're not doing it. They're not doing that. So I don't know whether this is only in the urban area punya trend, ataupun in the remote area will be the same. Yang tu kita tak ada data.
Mona, if we go back to the last election that Sarawakian had to do, which was the state election, 76 out of 82 seats for GPS, that's very, very strong. So takkanlah for the parliamentary seats, it's going to be the other way around. So chances are, logically, a lot of analysts are looking at 24 to 26 seats for GPS. 24 to 26 seats out of a simple majority of 112, they could make almost any coalition able to cross that line with that number. So how is that now being looked at? Because if I listen during the launching of the GPS manifesto by Yang Amat Berhormat Premier, that time, the last time the Premier was launching the manifesto, he said the word kingmaker. He's confident that they have played that role before, and GPS can even play that role more crucially now. So in that light, I'm asking you, with the Premier leading the GPS government to proactively go outside, like going to Singapore, establishing a trade office, and asking for technical partnership, technological partnership, and know-how for big projects like, public urban public transportation, hydrogen, whatever else, how are we looking at international relations? Because there's a Malaysia brand, and now there's a Sarawak brand being actively pushed out.
Okay, that's a really good point there. And I remember tadi Faridina was talking about strong men or strong woman persona in terms of a country. And I think this is something that Sarawak has been doing good. Abang Jo has been going out there, and he delivered a keynote address to World Hydrogen Summit. So whatever ideas you have of the politician in him, but the fact that he was out there representing Sarawak, I think that made us really proud. So if we put our politics aside, you're putting Sarawak on the world map, and right now he's being invited to a lot more climate change forum in Tokyo and other renewable energy conferences around the world. So that alone tells us a lot about our I guess policy in terms of dealing with the outside world. Now, it's not about like Sarawak first, as in we want to detach ourselves from Malaysia, but in a way, we also want to detach from the politics of West Malaysia, which is a lot of race and religion based, unfortunately. And this will affect our international policies or international relations, because even as when we bid for conferences or events to bring it to Sarawak, sometimes they relate us back to some of the policies that West Malaysia or Malaya is actually doing. So they said, oh, you guys are saying that you can't organize this event, if you have these performances, concert ni tak boleh, orang cancel apa semua kan. So in that sense, we need to separate and say that Sarawak is different. You can do a lot more things that you can't do in West Malaysia. I'm not saying that we're doing bad stuff. I'm just saying that we're a bit more liberal and to a certain extent, to an acceptable level. So
Get an argument from me on that. You know what my stand is on that. But I do have to ask you this. I'm going to give the background to our guests and our audience. Mona is also a top executive with a family business. They run Place Borneo, and Place Borneo has organized and bid for big events to be done in Sarawak. So isn't it tough, Mona? Because in the world of business event, or it used to be called MICE, M-I-C-E, nama itu penting. The name is important. The brand is important. I've been discussing with Paulina, she had that too, where people only know Malaysia as a country between Thailand and Singapore. Imagine trying to push the name Sarawak. I want your views on this.
Yeah, that's very, very important. Sebab I remember one of the bids we did, and then the committee tanya, okay, what is your stand on the LGBTQ punya community? Because at that time we had a very big issue lah. Something happened in West Malaysia. So, but because we are Sarawak, we're very separate. It's not that saying we totally accept them, we allow everything, but it's just that we do not punish heavily without any reason or what. So in that sense, I think this kind of separation, not from Malaysia, but from the concept of how we do things in Sarawak is very important. And if we wanted to look at also our education, putting English in our STEM or STEM education, I think that also tells us that we value our international relations very, very highly, and we want to make sure that we can communicate with our international partners and people. And if you can see a lot of the graduates, unfortunately right now, they have quite poor English. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the reality of the matter right now. And that's why Sarawak is implementing this, because we want to go international.
You with my guest here. I have great guests here. But before that, I do have to fire you this question. When I look at your Deputy Premier's social media, in his slogan, in what he says, the line Sarawak first always come out, whether verbally or right there in the background. So I have interviewed Arwah Tok Nan live 2 times. I've interviewed Abang Jo more than 3 times. They have always assured me, all these interviews, that no matter what kind of justice and rights they are pushing for, the Federation of Malaysia is always, always sacred. It cannot be jeopardized in any which way. We have inherited this to the ingenuity, to the diplomacy of our forefathers, and we're not just going to jeopardize that. But now is the age of social media. People look at that line, people might not link it to 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So how do you look at S4S? Is what the Deputy Premier espousing a manifestation of politics from Sarawak for Sarawakians?
I can't say for him, and I haven't got a receipt from Prof. Sim actually on any comments, but this is what I gather from his posting, and I think it's misconstrued as us being separate from Malaysia or West Malaysia. And this one is also because in one of the events that Abang Jo was actually launching the manifesto, and he mentioned that GPS manifesto is more on Sarawak first. And this means to put Sarawak's people's needs first, and not to actually to pander to the needs of like BN ataupun political punya pandering, just to get to get wins from Sarawak, because we are the kingmaker at the end of the day. So when he mentioned this was also brought up because of the suggestion by, I think, Mat Zahid, saying that we need a DPM for Sabah, Sarawak, and one for West Malaysia. So Abang Jo was saying that yes, we do have, we want to be a DPM, but is there going to be power related to that? Or is that just a role, like a puppet letak kat sana? Kalau puppet, anyone can be. We have candidates for that. But what power will we have as DPM of Malaysia? And that's why he says, whatever it is, whatever they're offering, whether it's election talk or coffee talk, shop talk.
Mona, let us ask our great guest, because War is part of international relations, posturing, grandstanding, whatever they call it. So how do you look at it? Sarawak first? Sarawak for Sarawakian has been there for some time. Is Sarawak first linking to Sarawak for Sarawakian? How do you see it?
I mean, the best person to answer will be the Deputy Chief Minister himself. That statement came from him. I can't speak on his behalf, but I would say that such statement is, as what Mona mentioned also, is that issues are dealt, if in the case of Sarawak, in the Sarawak way of handling it. All right, or in Malay we say dalam acuan Sarawak, betul, right? Okay. Which is maybe different from, say, the West Malaysian style of doing it. I think that is what is been interpreted. It's supposed to be so, but of course, the best person you must ask Dr. Sim himself. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. But we, the voters, need to consider, because I'm going to post this to Farlina. They still have to join forces heavily centered on Malaya or Peninsular Malaysia to form majority in Dewan Rakyat. To cross the 112, even if Sabah joins Sarawak, they can't cross that 112. To cross 112, GPS, as the kingmaker, have to join. And all these other PN, BN, and PH have their own manifesto. And they didn't put Sarawak first. They didn't put Sabah first in their manifesto. So how is the marriage and the coalition going to be? And this is diplomacy, Paulina.
I think something that I actually took away from Dr. Roy and also Mona's point is about the assurance that that needs to be for when they actually enter into the coalition, that their Sarawak will actually be placed first. And that sounds like that is definitely the contentious point, because when even hearing some of the issues and challenges that you have about the branding, when you actually put Sarawak first, or you actually place, when you're speaking about the MICE, applying for some of the MICE events and things like that, there's that I think conflict sometimes from the branding that actually comes. And I think, so something that actually is struck at the back of my mind is actually not necessarily related to some of this, but it is actually very loosely related, which is the co-branding of actually having Malaysia, Sarawak, and then actually thinking about it in some parts of the world where you actually have the states, like Silicon, like certain brands that's related to states, like Silicon Valley or something like that, that's actually prominent. But then at the same time, you actually also have you actually have the branding from the nation.
That's like Bali and Indonesia, or Phuket and Thailand.
But that's also a bit separate from the bit that we're actually looking at, which is about the assurance that the Sarawak needs would actually be placed first when you actually have you're voting for your leader.
So it's going to be interesting to see that compromise, right? Why should that be later? In full transparency, that should be discussed now, before we make our decision to vote. I love Sarawakian like Mona and my Sabahan friends, but which will be the right fit and partnership? That hasn't really been talked about. All we hear is sloganeering saying, if it's that coalition, I don't want. Yeah, but it's not that simple. So that's what we're looking at. So Mona, my last question to you, solidarity in these days are not just nation-based or state-based. Like Borneo is only one geography and one ecosystem. The orang utan doesn't know nationality. Dia tak ada kad pengenalan, tak ada IC. But when the NGO protested the EU Governance Council, they just say, don't buy palm oil because they burn orang utan and they cut their homes. And that is so powerful. And we are having problems now. And that affects thousands of our pekebun sawit, petani, peladang dan sebagainya. So I'm going to ask you this. What is the mood, especially among the young people like you and below your age in Sarawak and in Sabah? You are very active around Sabah and Sarawak and Kalimantan to an extent, in looking at that new breath of fresh air in leadership that goes beyond partisanship. That means putting what matters first, like sustainability, climate change, and the solidarity of Borneo. Mona.
Okay, before that, sorry, ada macam construction pula dekat atas my office ni. Okay, so I think for the younger generation, definitely we are all into this whole sustainable green economy or circular economy, whatever you want to call it, and sustenance or preservation of our wildlife. And the younger generation, they're actually more aware and more keen to actually be part of it themselves and not just to be, just supporting by word or be a keyboard warrior, but they want to be part. So an example of this, we have young people who actually created Kuching Beach Cleaners Association. So they go out there to just clean the beaches. But in terms of international relations, I actually I have no information on that, whether there is a specific policy that is set just for that. But I do know in our PCDS, or the post-COVID development strategy that have been launched, I think just last year or 2 years ago, we have a lot of eco tourism, for example, or green technology being put in and being implemented and being want to be part of our development and not just development for the sake of development.
Okay. Understand. Mona, you just stay there. But one last thing, I promise you, one last thing. You, as a business person, you are looking at Kalimantan and Nusantara, right? The new capital city. Because it doesn't make sense if you are doing business and entrepreneurship in Sabah or in Sarawak and not looking at all that. Anybody helping you to make bridges and roads and networks with your counterparts on the other side?
At the moment, belum. But we had a presentation by the Consulate General Indonesia based in Kuching, Bapak Radin Sigit Wijaksono. So he actually established all the plans that they have for Nusantara, and he is the one who actually explained to us what's going to happen. In terms of from our government side, I can't say for sure, I can't say on behalf. I have to find out more about that.
State or federal?
Any state.
Okay. Have you heard anything from federal?
Oh, definitely no.
Okay. Mona, just tunggu situ. If you want to say anything, just shout, okay? So that I can see orang angkat tangan. I want to go to the last lap of the last lap. So we've discussed many things, but I'm just going to sum it up. Even though there's a survey recently that said only 9% of voters say that international relations is very important. But I think from our discussion today, it's very clear. We can't define international relations in the old ways of only the diplomats and the head of governments talking. International relations concern us all. Pasar Borong Selayang, I might just be a trader, but the Rohingyas are populating there. During the pandemic, we see as if there's two blocks. Or illegal aliens mentality like Trump, or the other one is human rights. If we save them, we save us too. That's how public health works. So, Roy, before we end, including the Borneo and everything else, how do you see? You already said that PRU 16 or GE16 and above, international relations should be incorporated either standing alone or incorporated into the other policies. For GE15, what is the best compromise?
Best compromise
as in the offering by the would-be YBs and government.
Well, I mean, of course, it's not too late, although maybe in the official documents didn't mention in particular hubungan antarabangsa or international relations. But like it or not, we are living in a globalized world. Malaysia is so linked with regional countries and at the international, global as well. So once they form the government, then issues like what you have highlighted, like migration and all, has to be a cornerstone in the new government.
I'm going to flip that question, right? You know perfectly well that many eyes around and outside our borders are looking at this election. It's not just us Malaysians very interested.
Yes.
Would one of the key main points you're looking at, would we be able to survive a fragmented result when no coalition actually get the simple majority and they have to form a new compromise coalition to rule?
I think Malaysia has reached to a stage today, a new political scenario. The days of like a party can easily get two-third majority, that time have gone. Okay. So like it or not, we have reached a time where there is, compromise or post-election form of bargaining that is going on. It is now today a norm. Okay. If we talk about new norm, this is a new norm in Malaysian politics.
Right?
Yes.
The reset has happened. Farlina, 30 seconds. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Such a huge question. But I think just bringing forth from what Dr. Roy actually mentioned, from the sounds of it, if we actually do have difficulties in actually we're choosing the new leaders for tomorrow. So what would actually be what Malaysia is actually going to be like tomorrow? And I think that goes down to what has been Malaysia's consistent identity when it comes to international relations. Will it actually be a non-partisan, a bipartisan? What type of partisan issue is it going to be? I think we would actually still be non-aligned. There are certain things that would actually still be a part of Malaysia's international relations identity. Yeah, and I think that is actually some of the things that would be necessary for us to actually take a look at. And those engagements need to be continued.
Just to add on what
Sure.
Falina mentioned, in terms of Malaysia's foreign policy, it has been rather consistent. In 2018, when there was a change of government, for example, on issues like Palestine, our active participation in non-alignment, and it still continues to today. So that element still persists. But when as mentioned, domestic politics, right? We have reached an era. Perhaps there will be a coalition government in terms of there will be some form of negotiation post-election, which is common in many democracies.
Okay. So, thank you very much, Professor Madhya, Dr. Roy. Thank you very much, Farlina, my new friend from ISIS, the right ISIS, not the Daesh. And thank you so much, Mona. At least a voice from Borneo. We hardly hear them in drama and everywhere else in Malaya or Peninsula. But thank you so much. This is the last lap, and I want to end you, which sounds like very intellectual, but it's a very short quote on international relations by Henry Kissinger. He said, intellectuals analyze the operations of international system. Statesmen build them. Do we have the statement that will build the international system, offering themselves to be our YBs going into GE15? Is my stand for today, for the last lap on international relations. Where are we in international standing and repute? See you in another last lap very soon. Goodbye. Thank you so much.